economics, that is sectors of the Indian economy. First, we'll learn about the terminology, that is economic activities. What is economic activities? Economic activity means producing goods and services. And when we produce goods and services, we earn income. So in short, we can say economic activities means production of goods and services, and in return we earn money. Now we'll learn about classification of economic activities. Economic activities are classified into three: primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. Hello kids, today we are going to start with the second chapter of economics, that is sectors of the Indian economy. First, we'll learn about the terminology, that is economic activities. What is economic activities? Economic activity means producing goods and services. And when we produce goods and services, we earn income. So in short, we can say economic activities means production of goods and services, and in return we earn money. Now we'll learn about classification of economic activities. Economic activities are classified into three: primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. So we were discussing about the classification of economic activities. Under that, the first one is primary sector. So what is primary sector? Primary sector means carrying out activities with the help of natural resource. That is, all the activities done in the primary sector is related to the natural resource that we get from the earth. It is also known as agriculture and related sector because all the raw material that we get or the natural resources that we get is from agriculture. It is very important because primary sector provides raw material to the other sector, that is secondary sector and tertiary sector. Example of this is agriculture, fishing, mining, forestry, horticulture, etc. Now second classification, that is secondary sector. Secondary sector means transformation of raw material. What? Raw material into finished goods. And these goods are more valuable and more useful. Secondary sector is also known as manufacturing sector. Why? Because the raw material that we get from the nature, it is converted into better use. That's why it is known as manufacturing sector. It is very important because raw material is converted into better form, which provides us more value for the goods. Examples of secondary sectors are automobile industries, textile industries, sugar mills, etc. The third classification of economic activities is tertiary sector. Tertiary sector, it does not deal with any sort of production. It just provides services. Let's take example. When we are doing agriculture, we require tractor, we require harvester. When production is done, so we require transportation to carry the crops from the field to the godown, or maybe from the godown to the market. So what it is doing? It is providing you services. For doing the farming, farmer needs money for purchasing the high yielding variety of seeds, machineries, etc. So that's why it is also known as service sector. Why? No goods is produced, only services are provided. Now it is very important sector, even more important than the first and the second one. Why? It is a link between the two sectors, that is primary and secondary. As I told you previously, when agriculture is to be done, farmer needs various modern machineries, high yielding variety of seed, chemical fertilization. So those things, to reach to the farm, we need transportation, crop insurance, banking, communication, godowns. All these are the services. Then when manufacturing is done in secondary sector, those equipments, those machineries for transportation, for purchasing, we require the services of the tertiary sector. That's why it is called the link between the other two sectors. Examples: teaching. Right now I am teaching. What it is? I am just providing my services to you. And in return, what you are doing? You pay fees to the school, and in return we get the salary. Banking. What is done by the banks? They just provide the service. The depositors comes, they deposit the money. The withdrawer comes, they withdraw the money. And in between, the difference between the two is the earning for the bank. So they are just providing you the service, nothing else. No production is taking place. Transportation. From your home to school, or from one city to another city, you are traveling very often. What is this? This is also example of service sector. You pay the money and you get the services. Now we are going to start with the new topic, that is how are sectors interdependent and interrelated to each other. It means all the three sectors that we have learned, primary, secondary and tertiary, all those three sectors are interdependent on each other and they are related with each other. Now how they are, that I am going to prove with the help of an example. Let's take an example. Cotton. Where is this cotton found? Cotton is grown in the field. That is the part of the primary sector. After the production is done, it is transported with the help of truck. The truck takes the cotton, that is the raw material, to the textile industry. At textile industry, the manufacturing takes place, and for doing so, they require money to purchase the raw material, for transportation. So that money they take it from the tertiary sector, that is from the bank. After the manufacturing is done, so the product is shirt, t-shirt, jeans, etc. Once again, with the help of the transportation, the manufactured good, that is more valued product that is produced, is again transported and it reaches to the market. In the market, the product are sold to the consumers like us. Again, how they get related? Raw material, use of second one, tertiary sector, that is transportation. For transportation, money is needed. So secondary sector gets dependent on the tertiary. Then tertiary, for providing the services, the products are coming either from the primary or from the secondary. Thus, all the three sectors, that is primary, secondary and tertiary, are related to each other. One important terminology that generally comes under this topic is intermediate goods. Intermediate goods are those goods which are needed to produce the final product. For example, take biscuit. To manufacture biscuit, the raw materials that we need is wheat. Wheat is converted into wheat flour. From wheat flour, it is sent either to the bakery or the biscuit company. There, they add various other ingredients and finally the biscuit is made. So, to make the biscuit, there are so many ingredients needed in that. So, those ingredients are called intermediate goods and biscuit is called the final product. So, now we are going to go for the another topic, that is how to count various goods and services and know the total production in each sector. Keep in mind, when we are studying about this, we only count the final product, as I told previously also. Okay, when we make the final product, all the values of the previous ingredients is included in that. Let's take example over here. Farmer sells wheat at the rate rupees 8 per kg. To flour mill, the flour mill, after grinding the wheat, grinds wheat, sells to, say, biscuit company, at rupees 10 per kg. Now the biscuit company, we can say, so biscuit company adds other ingredients or the items in this one, we can say cashew nut, oil, preservatives, and then bake, and finally the biscuit is made. So once the final product biscuit is made, so we can say, take example, the packet is sold for 15 rupees per packet. So when per packet of biscuit is sold for 15 rupees, so in this 50 rupees, this 8 rupees and this 10 rupees, and even the profit of the biscuit company is included. So the consumer gets the biscuit at rupees 15, which includes the value of this and this. So we should not keep on repeating. If we are repeating it again and again, then it is called as double counting. So finally I conclude, in the final product, the values of the intermediate goods is already included. Now in this topic, that is GDP and historical changes in the sector. First, we will learn about GDP. Then we will learn about the second topic. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. Every country's development depends on the GDP. Right now, the whole world is facing this pandemic COVID-19, and except China, every country's GDP is going down. We are in the stage of great economic depression. So how do we know this? That is through GDP, that is gross domestic product. How do we calculate this GDP? It's very simple. We calculate the GDP of the country by the sum total of all the three sectors, that is total value of the primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. When we do the sum of all the three sectors, we get the GDP of a country. And this hectic work of calculating the GDP is done by our central government ministry, what we call it as finance ministry. Now we are going to learn about the second topic, that is historical changes in the three sectors. That is how there has been shift from primary sector to secondary sector and from that to tertiary sector. So it is believed, the economist says, that generally primary sector was the leading producer or maximum contributed in the GDP and provided maximum employment in a country for several years. Let's take for more than 200 years, because in most of the countries till industrialization did not started, agriculture was the prime activity. But as the time went on, industrialization started, more better equipments began, so modernization came in farming. Due to modernization, modern methods of techniques, tools, high yielding variety of seeds, chemical fertilizers were used in doing the agriculture. Finally, the production increased. And when the production increased, people slowly started shifting from primary sector to secondary sectors. So in short, we can say for 100 or 200 years, primary sector boomed the GDP and even in providing the employment. Slowly, the shift went to secondary sector. In most of the countries, industrialization started. People started moving in the secondary sector because more employments were provided, better wages were given, better standards of livings were provided. So people now shifted to the secondary sector and worked more and more. So for another 100 years, secondary sector was the leading producer in GDP and provided maximum employment. Then it is believed slowly the shift from secondary sector went to tertiary sector when production was done on a huge level. Now there are people who need to provide these services. So service sectors like transportation, banking, insurance, communication, education, hospital, tourism, all these sectors came in, and today these are one of the leading industries in any countries. You see the East Asian countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, they all are the hotspot for the tourism. Most of our India, even during this pandemic, COVID-19 started, many people were still on tour to these countries. So now it is believed that tertiary sector is booming in the various countries. Welcome back. Now in this topic, that is growing importance of tertiary sector, very important topic and a very frequent asked question in the board. So we will learn how the importance of the tertiary sector is increasing nowadays in most of the countries. Take example of India, whom we consider as a developing country. So it is responsibility of a developing country to provide services like education, banking, transportation, police, defense, communication. All these facilities should be provided by the government. Why? People cannot afford these services very easily. Developing countries, they are providing these services more better, but it is quite costly. Many of my friends and relatives who live in America, they say they get these services very easily, but when I ask them about the cost, they say it is very costly. So many of my friends for medical, they comes to India, what we call it as medical tourism. Second, now we are seeing that is there has been vast increase in the primary and secondary sector. As the importance and the production of primary and secondary sector increases, it leads to more demand of tertiary sector. Say crop production increases. For transporting the crops from the farm to the godown, we need transportation. Farmer do not have such a big storage facilities, so he requires godown. There are chances that his crops may get damaged, so for that he requires insurance. There are chances that those may be attacked by the enemies, so we need the security guard, or we can say the defense. So all these are provided by the tertiary sector. So we can say as the primary and secondary sector develops, the demand for the tertiary sector increases. Third point, due to the development of all the three sectors, income is increasing. So as the income increases, people's demand increases. Take example, our own life. When we were earning say 10,000, 20,000, what were our ideas? What were our thinkings? We were more conscious. We were conscious to save the money. Why? Earning was less. We were not spending money lavishly. But today, maybe you are earning 50,000 rupees, maybe 1 lakh rupees. So your earning increase. So very often I find my students with their family often visiting to the malls once in a month. Very often on Wednesdays when industries are not functioning due to the power cut. So generally for the dinner or the lunch, students are there in the various restaurants or the hotels for the dinner. Why? Because the income has increased. So the demand for eating outside, better schools, better coaching centers, best services has increased, and all the credit goes to income. And finally, if we see in the last 10 to 20 years, the world has become revolutionized. We all have started using the IT, information and technology. The teaching that I'm doing right now is the best example. Due to this COVID-19, we all are helpless. But thanks to this IT, because of this IT, though you are safe at your home, still our education, our teaching is not affected. Welcome back. Now we are going to learn about another topic, that is unemployment and types of unemployment. So first we will get clear with the terminology known as unemployment. What does unemployment mean? Very simple. It means when a person is willing to work, but unfortunately he is not in a position to get work, though he is ready to work at whatever the conditions or prevailing the wages are, but still unfortunately he is not getting the job. Such situation is known as unemployment. But keep in mind, when person is willing and not getting, then only. But when I provide you the job and you are not ready to do, it is not known as unemployment. Such type of situation is known as, we can say, educated unemployment. Such type of situation generally we find in cities. Say a graduate, what happens? When he gets a job of a peon or a clerk, he is not ready to accept it, but he feels it is beyond his dignity. So such graduates are unemployed in the city. Now we will learn about various types of unemployment. Under that, the first we have seasonal unemployment. As the terminology says, seasonal, it means the person remains employed for the particular season only. Once the season gets over, the person becomes seasonally unemployed. Example, in agriculture, what happens? Till the ploughing, leveling, manuring, irrigation is there, the workers are employed on the field. Once the crops are left for getting ready for harvest, there is no job for these farm laborers. So for another 1 or 2 months, they are unemployment. Again, after 2-3 months, when the crops are ready for harvesting, again the farm laborers are employed and they come for harvesting. Again, when the harvesting season is over, till the next season begins, again they are unemployed. So what we conclude here, they are seasonally employed. Second one, disguised unemployment, or even this is known as under unemployed. What it means? Where more than needed people are employed. Again, take an example. On a field, say this is a field, say 10 hectare. On this field, 2 persons are working. When these 2 persons are working, output is same. Later on, 3 more persons join. We can say the family member joined to work on the same field. So now we have all together 5 members working on the field. We can see the work gets divided. Any person can say all the 5 members are working. But the reality is they seem like working, but these 3 persons who came later on, they do not make any difference in the total outputs. The output remains same what was at the time of these 2 persons. Now we are going to start with new topic, that is Manrega 2005. Manrega means Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. This act is also known as Right to Work. This scheme was launched by the government to provide 100 days guaranteed job to Indians. This scheme specially functions in weaker, or we can say backward districts of our country. The main objective behind this scheme was to provide 100 days guaranteed job to Indians. Now suppose the government fails to provide the job, then unemployment allowances are given to the people. At present, this scheme is implemented in 625 backward districts of our country, and it is sponsored by central government in various states of our country. Certain seats in these schemes are reserved for women and even for SC, ST and other backward classes. Now we are going to move with the next topic, that is division of sectors. Sectors are divided into 2, organized sector and unorganized sector. Before we start comparing the both, we should know what are organized sectors and unorganized sectors. Organized sectors, we can say, are those sectors where there are rules and regulations, government norms are followed, and unorganized sectors, we can say, are those which generally do not have such norms, or they do not follow rules and regulations set up by the government. Now in exam this is very often asked, most probably every alternate years for 3 or 5 marks in the board it is asked. So we are going to learn in detail both the organizations. And here I have set certain parameters how very easily you can remember this topic. So let's begin. So parameter number 1, job security. So in organized sector we have job security, means once you get the job you have job security. They cannot throw you out of the job whenever they feel like. Generally we have the terms and conditions. For example, say for 3 months they will not throw you out, or even you cannot leave the job. From the both the side we are binding to each other. Okay, we had to give prior intimation of 3 months. Whereas in unorganized sector we don't have such job security. Second parameter, appointment letter. So the day when your job is confirmed, and organized sectors provide you job letter. It means your job is confirmed and you are the employee of that particular organization. No such appointment letter is provided. A person working in a shop, maybe a medical shop, do we find any sort of appointment letter? No. But being a teacher, I got an appointment letter. It's an organized sector. But yeah, again, All the schools are not organized sector. It depends on school to school. Third parameter, working hours. So if a person is working in an organized sectors have limited working hours. Most probably government has set 6 to 8 hours, whereas in unorganized sectors we don't have such fixed working hours. On an average, everyone is working for 12 hours and it may extend also. Even many of my parents who are working as a manager, maybe a tile designer, every day they work for 12 hours. Talking about working conditions, so we find good working condition, that is it is spacious, ventilated, soundproof, healthy, hygiene. Whereas in unorganized sector, we find poor working conditions. We move to the next one, paid leaves. So in organized sectors, we have the paid leaves. Government holidays are there, weekly holidays are there. So such types of holidays or leaves are available in organized sector, whereas there are no such types of paid leaves in unorganized sectors. Then we come to overtime. Overtime means when your working hour is fixed. Take example, every day you have to work for 6 hours or say 8 hours. But someday you work for another 2 hours or 4 hours, say 10 hours. It means you have worked extra 4 hours. So you will be paid extra for those 4 hours. So we say that overtime is paid in organized sector, but no such overtime facilities are available in unorganized sector. Finally, the last parameter that we have, allowances. Okay, apart from all such facilities, even you get the allowances. That is, apart from salary, fixed salary that you get at the end of the month, there are the other benefits that also you get in this type of job. So what are those? Traveling allowance, dearness allowance, house rent allowance, petrol allowance, medical, education. So such allowances are given in organized sector, but all such allowances are not given in unorganized sector. Now the next topic is division of sectors on the basis of ownership. Keep in mind ownership. So on the basis of ownership, there are two types of sector, public sector and private sector. This is also very important topic from the point of view of examination. And again, as I said, the previous topic also, this is very easy. Again, certain parameters I have set so that you can remember the points very easily and complete the topic. So the first parameter that I have set over here is ownership. Okay, who is generally the owner of the public sector? So public sector is one which is owned by the government, run and managed both by the government. Whereas the private sector is one which is owned or run or managed by individual, or we can say group of individuals. Second parameter is aim, or we can say objectives. So as the word says, public. So it is quite obvious that it is made for the development and the welfare of the society. See our schools, government schools, totally free education is given, or maybe minor fees is charged as we go higher. So it's for the welfare of the society. But when we talk about private sector, their main objective is to earn profit. No doubt even they work for welfare, but main objective is profit. Third parameter is decision making. So all the decision related to the public sector is taken by the government. Whereas on the other hand side, in private sector, decisions are taken by managers or the owners. Next one is job security. So in public sector, job security is more, or we can say 100%. We find many such examples in our day-to-day life. Okay, the person is a government servant, not working properly, people are complaining, but still, as person is sure, once I get the job, no one can throw me out of the job. So 100% job security is there. Here also we can say job security is there, but compared to public sector, it is less. Next parameter we have is source of income. So the source of income for the public sector is taxes that we pay. All the citizens of our country pays the various types of taxes. So the taxes that are collected, that is the main source of income for the public sector, and from those earning, the welfare work is carried out by the government. The source of income for the private sector is the shares and the debentures that are issued by the various companies in the beginning or time to time in between also. Finally, the last one, examples of public sectors. So we have the railways, Indian Railways, we have the post office, BSNL. Whereas on this side we have numbers of private sectors like Bata, Reliance, Amway, etc. Now the next topic is how to protect workers in unorganized sector. This is one of the prominent problem faced in India today. So we have to seriously work on this, and government has to take serious steps to protect the workers. Even right now when COVID-19 pandemic is going on, we see so many workers moving from one place to another where there is no transportation facilities. So they are moving without any transportation facilities. So let's see what step government can take. These are just suggestions, and many of them were points government is working also, but it depends on how strictly it is followed. So the first one we can say is Wage Act. No doubt government has made Wage Act, that is equal wages for equal work. So whatever numbers of hours you are working, for that there are certain parameters set by the government. Here take example, for the 6 hours or 8 hours, 300 or 500 rupees will be paid for the laborer. So if it is set, it should be strictly followed. Second one, minimum working hours. As we discussed previously also, okay, there should be numbers of hours set. That is limited one, which is ideal, we can say 6 to 8 hours, and if you are working more than that, then they should be paid over time. Next one is labor laws. Till MNC companies did not came in our country, that is before 1991, in our country labor laws were followed very strictly. But to attract these MNCs, we made lots of compromises in the labor laws, and today laborers are exploited in a different ways. So to protect them, once again the labor laws should be strictly followed. Cheap loans, laborers who are working in unorganized sectors. So if government is providing loans at cheaper rate and very easily, they can borrow loans from government and start some small business by themselves. Next, good working conditions. Generally, if you take a visit to any unorganized sector, you see how congested the industries are or the working conditions are. It's not healthy, hygienic, spacious, well ventilated. So, if good working condition is there, it will be good for their health. And finally, more industries should be set up by the government. So if more industries are set up, the balance, a limited workers will be working and it will not be over congested, what we say as disguised unemployment. So if more industries are there, more workers will get job at a better wages and good working conditions. And finally, the last topic of the chapter, how to create more jobs in rural areas, urban areas. First, we will see how we can create more jobs in the rural areas. Rural areas means village. So, normally we know in villages maximum population is of farmers. So keeping farmers in mind, we have to see okay, what sort of jobs can be created according to their skill. So first is cheap loans. Cheap loans can be given to the farmers. If cheap loan is provided, they can purchase seeds, chemical fertilizers, and their production will increase. When production will increase, farmers can employ more laborers, that is farm laborers. So in this way, many landless person will get job in the farm. Second, small scale industries. So villages, their government can start small scale industries where people can show their skills and even the work can be started at home also, like say candle making, craft. Third one, agricultural inputs. Normally in the villages, farmers face problem of loan. So government should provide subsidies. One of the major problems in our country, every year we see thousands and thousands of farmers committing suicide. They do not get good return for their crops. So if government is providing more facilities with subsidies, this will be helpful for our farmers and our farmers can compete even at the international level. What we will be learning later on in economics chapter number 4. Then fourth one is diversification of agriculture. Most of our farmers, they just keep on doing the same activity, that is farming. So season by season, Rabi crop, Kharif crop, Z season and over. But to have a better earning, or we can say more earning, they can diversify their agriculture. That is, along with growing of normal crops or the major crops, they can have some side business. For example, if they are growing wheat, along with that they can have the horticulture. They can practice dairy farming. So that will be an extra earning for them. This is how jobs can be created in the rural areas. There can be more points, but here few points I have given to you. Now we come to how jobs can be created in urban areas. So urban areas means cities. So population is more, so more and more industries, big industries should be set up where more jobs are created. That is the first way. Second one is skill development centers. So today our Prime Minister has started Skill India. So for such types of skills we don't require high degrees, we need skills. So in every districts we have the ITIs where students learn after 10th or 12th various skills like plumber, electricians, mechanic, fitter. So they have the skills, and with that skills they are charging a lot. Take an example. After doing engineering, are you repairing your fan? No, you call for an electrician. And once the electrician comes, just for a visit, he is charging 50 rupees to 100 rupees just for a visit. Whatever extra charges will be different. A person who comes to repair your washing machine, on an average 250 to 300 rupees is his visit. And apart from that, whatever the repairment is done, that is extra. So on an average we can say 500 to 600 rupees he is earning for per visit. So you need to develop the skills in the people, and for that more numbers of centers should be developed in India. Next, our country is blessed with various communities who have very good business mind. The Marwadis, the Patels, the Sindhis, Luanas, they are the people with lot of business skills, but somewhere they lack with the money. So it is government job or responsibility to provide them with business loans. If easily they get and at affordable rate, they can set up small or big business of their own, which can create more jobs in the city, indirectly helping the government to reduce the unemployment ratio, reduce the poverty, increase the GDP and the growth rate of our country. Then talking about tourism. Today, tertiary sector, as we have discussed previously, is gaining boom. So different sort of tourism can be developed in our country, in our cities. Medical tourism can be there, adventure tourism can be there, education tourism can be there. So through tourism also jobs can be created in our country. Many times when we have the tour from our schools during summer vacation or during the Diwali vacation, we just give a contract to a person who is handling tours and travels, and then he provides with a guide who handles each and everything. So a very good amount of earning is there in tours and travels. So this is also one industry where lot of employment opportunity prevails in our country. With this, we end our chapter. Hope you enjoyed and understood each and every concept and topic in this chapter. Have a great day ahead.